Just within this past hour, the UN Security Council has voted to demand an end to Israeli settlements in the West Bank. The resolution passed with 14 votes, but key here, the United States did not take a side. It abstained.
It is because this forum too often continues to be biased against Israel, because there are important issues that are not sufficiently addressed in this resolution, and because the United States does not agree with every word in this text, that the United States did not vote in favor of the resolution. But it is because this resolution reflects the facts on the ground and is consistent with U.S. policy across Republican and Democratic administrations throughout the history of the State of Israel that the United States did not veto it.
U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Samantha Power explaining the why as far as the abstention. Israel had urgently called on the U.S. to veto this. Officials even accused the Obama administration of colluding in a quote-unquote Palestinian initiative intended to harm Israel. I have CNN correspondent Oren Lieberman in Jerusalem with reaction there. But Elise Labott, let me just go to you first, our CNN Global Affairs correspondent. I mean, you are in the weeds on this. Yes, it passed. Most significant that the U.S. abstained. And to quote you last hour, you see this perhaps as a parting shot from the Obama administration to the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
That's right, Brooke. And also to the settlement policy. President Obama has long held that the settlements were an impediment to peace. You remember Secretary of State John Kerry trying to get a peace deal between Israelis and Palestinians, spent many months doing that. And the settlements were one of the issues that were held up. I think for Sam Power, Ambassador Power, to say that the U.S. wasn't supporting the resolution by abstaining, I think, you know, look, by allowing this resolution to go through is very significant, and it's a really rare, not unprecedented, but rare abandonment of Israel at the United Nations by the United States on something it felt very strongly on and tried to deal with bilaterally as part of U.S. policy. But the Israelis clearly, we've been hearing from the Israelis, and Oren will talk about that, but they really see this as an abandonment of a core U.S. tenet to protect the U.S., to protect Israel at the United Nations from a body that the administration itself has considered very anti-Israel. But you know, the reverberations for this and how significant it is, I think, are going to go on for a long time. Now the international community, the United Nations, has declared Israeli settlements a flagrant violation of international law. How will that affect future Mideast peace deals and something that the U.S. might broker? And that's why you saw an interference by President-elect Donald Trump. The Israelis had warned the administration, if you go through with this, we're going to have no choice but to reach out to the president-elect. And the argument was that if he does what he says he wants to do, which is to get involved in a Mideast peace process, that this could tie his hands. And, you know, clearly it would give leverage to the Palestinians. And that's exactly what you saw him do yesterday. And I think you'll see a very swift reaction from the president-elect today.
Yeah, waiting for that reaction. We got a reaction from the U.S. House Speaker essentially calling the vote absolutely shameful. But before we get into some of the politics of this, looking ahead to a Trump administration, Oren, how is this about abandonment? How is Israel feeling about the abstention?
Well, the Israeli government and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's administration certainly feel like they were abandoned. They've been furious over the last 24 hours once we got word that the U.S. might let this pass, might abstain, or might even vote for it. And they issued a statement that was unprecedented in how harshly critical it was of President Obama and Secretary of State Kerry, accusing them of colluding with the Palestinians, which both the U.S. and the Palestinians denied. Israel was furious before, and they're furious after. Here is part of a statement from Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danon. He says, "Neither the Security Council nor UNESCO can sever the tie between the people of Israel and the land of Israel. It was to be expected that Israel's greatest ally would act in accordance with the values that we share, and that they would have vetoed this disgraceful resolution. I have no doubt that the new U.S. administration and the incoming UN Secretary General will usher in a new era in terms of the UN's relationship with Israel. It seems obvious the way the Israeli government is already looking. They're looking to President-elect Trump. They talked to him throughout this process and urged him to do what he could to avert this. He was able to pull it yesterday, but not today. Too many of those countries on the Security Council wanted to see this introduced, and it passed with the U.S. abstaining. We now have Palestinian reaction as well. Palestinian leader Mustafa Barghouti saying this is a victory for the people and for the cause, and it opens doors wide for the demand of sanctions on settlements. This is a move towards justice, and international law. No surprise there, the Palestinians hailing what they've been pushing for, not only now, but over the past 8 years. President Obama had stopped any UN Security Council resolution on Israel and the Palestinian territories until now, until his last few days in office, when he let this one go through. Doesn't seem like the Israelis, and Netanyahu in particular, are even close to being ready to forgive him for this.
Well, let me point out that as we've been talking, the president-elect has tweeted. So, Elise, I'm going to go to you on this, but Donald Trump has just said, as to the UN, things will be different after January 20th, the day of his inauguration. Things will be different. How do you interpret that?
Well, first of all, Donald Trump has made very clear that, and this is something actually that the Obama administration up till now has said, that dealing at the United Nations is not the place for negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians. And I'm told by some of President-elect's advisors that work with him on the campaign that they do expect that he is going to be intimately involved. But you have seen in his appointments, in his statements, that he is going to be much friendlier to Israel. He's talked about moving the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. His ambassador is a very controversial pick, David Friedman, who supports settlements, calls for expanding them, and even annexing the West Bank. We don't know how that'll play it into policy, but I think Donald Trump and certainly the Israelis feel that this administration has not always stood by Israel, particularly on the Iran deal, now on this particular vote. And I think this could actually harden the president-elect's position as he comes in and dealing with Israel to kind of compensate for what they feel is a real slap by the Obama administration.
Well, we mentioned, last question to you, Oren, you know, the Israeli government officials had asked for President-elect Donald Trump to intervene ahead of this vote. Tell me just about the relationship between Netanyahu and Trump.
Well, it seems from everything we're seeing now that this relationship is incredibly strong, certainly when you compare it to the strained relation, and strained relation is probably the nicest thing you can say about the relation between Netanyahu and Obama. It seems that Trump and Netanyahu will have a fresh start, a strong start. They've been in contact. And certainly the choice of Friedman as ambassador is a choice that the Israeli government sees as very positive. He's promised to move the embassy. He's promised to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And that perhaps that almost certainly is why Netanyahu, or officials working with Netanyahu, reached out to Trump to see what he could do. His efforts effective, but only for 24 hours until this resolution was reintroduced. And it's very possible that with Trump in the White House, this resolution won't really have teeth. Trump could keep this resolution from having any real practical effect. So we may not see any true effect on the ground here while Trump is in office. He can stop any further movement on this resolution at the UN if he so chooses.
Like you said, things will be different after January 20th. Oren and Elise, thank you both so very much. Coming up next here on CNN, President-elect Trump sets up this diplomatic firestorm with a tweet about nuclear weapons. How Russia is responding to that coming up.